Hello, everybody. BobbyFi and Eric Sheets. We're going to be talking through tonight's Tuesday's. What is it? A 7-game slate, I believe. Yeah, it's 7:30 start. So just right off top, please, guys, like and subscribe. All that stuff is really, really helpful. For us. But also, I wanted to say that we're gonna try out the doing 90 minutes early just tonight. We're gonna try the 6 p.m. Eastern to do a show then rather than just right before lock, and see if we can maybe make that work. And I know some of you guys mentioned that you would even like that. So we'll see how it goes tonight. I had a good night, not a great night. I could, almost a little less than double my money, I guess. But I had a nice little run in the 7-7-7 with some of the plays we talked about. One that I added to the Discord afterwards because I didn't talk about Giddy at all. And then the more I kept looking, I just thought without Dort in there, if they're going to have any chance to stay in this game, first game at Madison Square Garden, all that stuff, you'd have to have a big game, got the overtime and had a monster game. So I had a good night. Sheets, how about you? And then any sort of first thoughts before we jump in the slate?
Yeah, we're going to go through this as we kind of go because I just ran the projection. I'm just kind of like looking at it now. So it's literally going to be a first look. I will say that I was happy. Well, I made a couple of really good plays. I went to Bruce Brown at low ownership, and he had like 100x last night. But unfortunately, I got a little too fancy, and where it started off, the idea being it was a good pivot off of Mills. I ended up getting too fancy and just played them both together. So those lineups just kind of suffered as a result. I don't want to say he busted, but I would say that shout out to you for identifying the fact that Noura definitely was not somebody you actually had to have. You know, and not that he got no fantasy points. He did get probably like 8 extras, but people that played him didn't only want 23.5. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely.
And Grimes worked out just fine. And the other Milwaukee guys didn't do all that great.
No, they
Jokic got really lucky that they let him back in for. Well, the rest of the team played so bad they forced him to come back in the game. Yeah, he had a really bad game, Jokic. Yeah. But that goes to show you, man, he had an atrocious game and had 57 fantasy points.
Right.
It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ty Jerome sort of busted at 23 points. And the one guy that I had that you know what, I should know this because they don't close with this guy, but I'll tell you what, a really, really nice game for the time he played was Zubac last night. Yeah. Really, I mean, he was really super actually. He had 29 fantasy points at 30, whatever he was, but he didn't get the fourth quarter basically because they let the rest of the team just kind of close that game out, the reserves. But he worked out all right. So I did end up being cashing that 7-7-7, which considering what else I did was enough to make me somewhat profitable for the night. So but again, it was Valentine's Day, so I put in my lineups and left and didn't do anything else. So I'll do a little better as far as my playing goes tonight, and we'll see what happens. Oh, it's another one, right? So it's $10. Oh crap!
Oh, I didn't even look at that part yet. So that's
it's a $5.55 paying 100K, and then it's a $10 paying 100K. So.
Oh wow! Okay.
I don't know if it's going to be 150, but there's going to be a lot of lineups thrown in there, I think.
Sure, I do like that you mentioned Zubac because I think that's we'll have that conversation with the last game, but I'm definitely going to have a reasonable amount of exposure. This is a conference finals rematch, and by the way, he had some dud games and sometimes in the playoffs. He also, I believe, had like 2 60s or 55 pluses or something against this Phoenix team in the conference finals. So, and that was with Paul George playing. So I do think we're gonna have to revisit that conversation a little later because I think that he's at the moment looks like a tremendous play at no ownership. So I kind of like that you brought him up already naturally. Yeah,
I mean overall slate, am I looking at like my top points per dollar plays, and they're guys that don't usually
not guys you want
show up for me as no, I'll play them, but they don't usually for me show up as the points per dollar plays for me. We'll get to them, but I really I launched it. I'm like, this is interesting. And I do like a couple of the spend ups, but I guess we'll get to it. So Cleveland, Atlanta first.
Yeah, Cleveland, Atlanta, and
let me share my screen, right?
I want to say that real quick. I do agree with what you're saying, and my hope is that not my hope actually. And funny, I kind of like it if it just stays the same, but maybe you don't need to use this value unless unless we get a lot of it. If it's not crystal clear the value we should be using, I just feel like in this day and age. I don't think we need to try and overreach on most slates, and we'll see how it goes. But that's where I'm at right now. I like the middling build to start, and it's probably going to change once we get somebody ruled out and 3 good 3K plays or something. All right, let's talk about the first game sheet. So get us started. What do you got?
So right out of the gate, I mean, I got two guys who I do play DeAndre Hunter frequently, but he rates to be a pretty good play. And I had been playing Capella, just hoping for those minutes to somehow get there. And lo and behold, somehow they gave him 30 minutes in that last game. Now it turns out it didn't really translate to that many fantasy points, but if those 30 minutes are now in the offing again, 5,300 is a very, very reasonable price for him. So he's rating for me, at least really early, to be one of the top point per dollar plays in the slate, which again is rare for him to actually get up that hot for me. So I like Hunter and Capella as far as values go. And as far as spender uppers, I do like Trey Young. And I think that we can play Darius Garland from Cleveland. So that's what I like. I like Trey Young, I like Garland, and I like Hunter, and the other one is as values in Capella.
Yeah, I actually think Capella should play minutes tonight without John Collins, that there is some minutes open.
Oh, that was it then. Okay.
And we have a Q tag on Bogdanovich and Wright, who at the moment I both expect to play, but any extra things that opens up is something. And one thing you could see Atlanta do, which you don't see very often, is if something happened, like DeAndre Hunter got in foul trouble, which one of these guys getting foul trouble, anybody, you might see an Okongwu and Capella together lineup, because that is the thing we usually don't see very much of. And they do close a lot of times with Okongwu because his defensive metric stats are really incredible. But if you get that possibility in there, and boy, I'm tempted to play Okongwu too. Not necessarily in the same lineup, of course, but like, I think Capella or Okongwu are both, one of those make for a very strong play. And at the same time, I think one of Gallinari, Herder, or you could throw Hunter in the mix too, or Bogdanovich. I expect one of them to have a big game. I'm always going to side when the minutes start to even out with Bogdanovich. It's just always going to happen in my natural lean. But I like that Herder is going to be a little bit low, like pretty low owned. And I think that Gallinari is always low owned. And these guys have ceilings. Like they can put up, 40 fantasy points, each one of those guys. So especially if DeLon Wright is out or something like that, I'm definitely going to want some exposure. Right now I have Bogdanovich as my favorite, if not him, Herder, or the aforementioned whatever. But then I do think that Trey Young is just like, it's crazy cheap. And what keeps surprising me about it is I just thought like today at 9,300, I'm like, okay, there's your chalk guy. There's the guy everybody plays. I mean, he's been over 50, 4 out of 6 last 6 games. It's supposed to be a close game. Like, I don't know. What are we, maybe it's overthinking by trying not to play Trey, but at the same time, if no one else is playing him, we really should be. And I love Garland as the run back. And if you're playing at large field tournaments, like when everybody else is looking for value, and even when the value is there, I think it's always good to mix in sprinkles with guys like a Coro, just because the minutes are so secure. He's going to be over 20 plenty of the time here. It's not going to maybe win you a tournament, but put up 40 or something. Every now and then he'll have an outlier game, but overall the minutes are pretty secure. So Okoro is my only other play that really stands out from a projection standpoint. But Mobley, LeVert, or Allen, you could make a case for. I just don't think that's what I'm going to do today. It is a good matchup, so everybody gets a little bit of a boost. But Garland is definitely my favorite. What do you got for Dallas and Miami?
Yeah, so not a lot. On the Miami side, PJ Tucker is showing up as a point per dollar play, which he always does, but he doesn't have the upside as far as I'm concerned to play him on a slate like this. Butler, I see as a Q tag, so I don't exactly know what to do about that. I currently don't have it projected, so I have no real opinion on it. I would like to think that this would be one of those games that he'd play well in. If they let him play, a game against Luka, you think he would get motivated for something like that. So obviously take a look at that. And on the Dallas side, it's hard to play guys against Miami. It just is. And it's hard to pay 12K for guys against Miami. And then, on the other hand, you have Luka scored 30 fantasy points in the first quarter. Excuse me, I think he had 28 real life points in the first quarter.
Is he doing every single game now? Because it feels like every single game he does it.
It certainly feels that way. He had like 6 threes in the first quarter.
When he's making threes, the game is over. He's shooting like this year, just to give you a feel for it. Like, I don't know what his percentage is now because he got really hot over the last 2 games, but he was like rough. He was down in like the same territory as Westbrook most of the season, and actually worse for a while, but lately he's gotten really hot. If those go down, he's going to put up 75. Doesn't matter who he's playing against.
And the funny thing is I'm glad I wasn't paying attention to that because if I had looked at this, I would have said, okay, I'm looking at the board right now. It says, okay, so Doncic against Luka against the Clippers, played 40 minutes, put up 75 fantasy points and 51 real life points. Mm-hmm. And then they played against the next game. I would be like, there's no way the Clippers will let him do that again. They would completely triple team him and not lock him down. And I would have been 100% dead wrong.
No, and by the way, there's a lot of history with that specific matchup. And I didn't get to touch on it the second one because I was we had it was a weekend game. I didn't do the weekend one. But the one thing with the Clippers have eliminated him from his only 2 postseasons. In those 2 postseasons, his numbers are better. Literally, if you look at them, I think he's somewhere around 38 a game with like 13 assists, 45% from 3, 90% from, like, his numbers are out of control when he plays that team.
Well, hang on. Let's look at this for a second. Okay, this Luka timeline here. Yep. So he had 75. Forget even that. Let's forget about the even matchup. So he had 75 and 75. The game before was a total Joe Cruz game. Didn't even need to play. Played 33 minutes at 65 with basically in his tuxedo. The game before that, they only had him play 28 minutes, and he was 6 for 17 from the field. No problem, 53. You know what I mean? In 28 minutes. And the game before that, another freaking blow-up game. I don't know where this guy was the first half of the season. He plays
himself into shape. It's just we're just gonna have to start accepting it. He does it.
But I don't know. Maybe 12K is too cheap, even against Miami. I don't know. He's gonna be low owned.
Yeah, I think we should be. I think it like so. Okay, for example, I'm playing 3 lineups. It would take some sort of a miracle for me not to have him in one of them if he really ends up below 15 or 20% owned. It's just Sheets. You can't make up these numbers. Like this is not game log chasing. This is like legitimate. This is the guy who he can beat, and not just for stretches. He can do this for like months and months and months at a time. And by the way, if the Mavs have been a little better, if the game stays close, they're only a 3.5 point underdog here in Miami. If it stays close, it just feels like Luka's gonna, even with the best defense on him, even everything, just feels like he's getting somewhere between 60 and 80. And
he is, right?
I just think like you just have to pencil him in for that almost. We don't have great value, but he's a tremendous play if value opens up. And if the thing that's weird is you have to use value on his team. My favorite value would go back to a guy who has been struggling for fantasy production, but I am more than okay with going back to Maxi Kleber at 3,500. I'm okay with taking a shot on Dorian Finney-Smith because those minutes are hard to come by. Guy plays 1 million minutes. And those would be some value-ish plays you could include with him. And it would be nice because it's not look, Dallas, Miami. I can't think of a game you don't generally want a game stack. But if anybody else, any funny business is happening and Butler ends up out, or even if he doesn't, I mean, Bam versus that front line is 7,900. That feels like it could be a 2020 type of possibility for him. I could get involved in this game, and it's weird because it's nothing about the tempo and pace or anything. It's just the players' pricing. Jimmy, if he plays, Bam is the number 2 for me. And then Lowry is right there. And no one likes to play Kyle Lowry at 6,400 or whatever he is now. 59 on FanDuel. He'll be popular over there. But he just put up 57 and had a triple double the other night, probably with Jimmy Butler playing, by the way. So I
don't know, man. It just seems as though we just want to play those track meets later. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. It's just, I'm just saying, look at the prices. Jimmy Butler, 86, 79. You guys have been up in the 9K ranges. Kyle Lowry is genuinely a 7,500 player who's being priced at 64. I hear you, bro. I hear what you're saying. It wouldn't surprise me if like in that game, it's possible neither team gets 100.
Yeah.
And this next game is the most game like that, I feel like, on this slate.
Well, I'll just like to share one narrative with you, which worked in the last game.
It's a good one. I like what you're going to say.
Yeah, just until Harden gets there, this is like Embiid's last chance to have like 100% usage, and he fully took advantage of that in his last game. In 83 freaking fantasy points.
Well, yeah, he's been. Go ahead.
In only 33 minutes. No big deal. 40, 14, and 10. Not a problem. 14 to 15 from the line on a back-to-back, no less. So Why not? I'll throw another 75 out there. I don't know. I think this is a really good play.
Since January, Embiid has a usage rate that I believe is the highest in the NBA. I think it's around 39% or so. Not to mention, on top of the usage rate, the guy just gets 1 million rebounds every game. So that's just put that in the bank too. This is the problem you run into, is that I think Luka's a better play than he is, barely, but the narrative stuff matters. Okay, Embiid is a narrative guy. He's a guy. This is his. Not only that, he still has a chance to win the MVP this year.
Yeah,
I mean, Philly could make a run and get the first, and Harden will get some of the credit, but Embiid not only kept his team afloat, like he's just single-handedly been beating people for the last month and a half. I love that play. I don't know if we're gonna have the value to do it. I am gonna put Luka as a little bit ahead. Probably a better matchup for Embiid though. Even though they have decent bigs, it's just Embiid is. I mean, he's gonna touch the ball every time, and he'll be 10 feet away from the basket plenty of the time. So I love the Embiid idea. I am going to say the same thing I always say. This is not the ideal matchup to do it, but one of Jalen or Tatum. It just basically, now we have Derek White in the mix, so it doesn't always need to happen anymore. But they're going to be unowned, and they always have a ceiling. That's it. Derek White is getting on the verge of a guy who we could start thinking about playing soon. Daniel Tice is going to muck things up because they'll play him some minutes for sure. And it's really weird that they're so happy to have him back. That was kind of a strange trade. But yeah, it's probably a better real life game other than Embiid than it is for DFS. And if there's anybody else on Philadelphia you could really consider, you would just be reaching, maybe taking a weird Danny Green shot, but I'm not going to do any of that stuff. So I'm just going to throw it out there. That's like Tobias Harris is playable, but I'm not going to do it. All right, here comes the mega chalk. We get to play our Lance at 1,000,000% ownership. What do you think about this?
That's the question, isn't it?
Well, we get the opportunity to fade him is now the
question. Do we have to play Lance Stevenson at 4K? I don't know. So I did want to, I don't have the time to do it now. I did want to dive into these minutes and see what these were all about. As obviously if he's going to play 34 minutes, you have to play him, right? But I got 2 games of him playing 34 minutes and none other. So what happened? Did he start the last game and got full starters?
Their whole team is just completely different. Yeah, he's been starting now with their new look lineup. He's been and by the way, they've actually, regardless of result, even I actually thought they looked pretty good and like a functional team while he was there. Oh,
that's right. Because what's his name left, right? So
the three, well, Brogdon's out, and no Sabonis is when Brogdon's out. You run everything through him, and then Karis LeVert is one of the highest usage guys. All these guys are gone. Tyrese Halliburton plays a perfect team game to where maybe you don't always want to play Halliburton, even though I think he's actually fine. But you want to play guys who play with guys like that because he's not out there demanding to shoot the ball, right?
Wait. So first of all,
go ahead. Sorry.
Lance Stevenson did not start this last game.
I believe he started the last one. No,
he had 30. I'm gonna have it up here. He had 32 minutes right. Off the bench.
I'm thinking of the game with Atlanta that he started.
Duarte started and got injured.
Yeah, Duarte's out. That's what happened.
After 5 minutes, and that's when Lance Stevenson came in.
And we have no Duarte.
So no. I'm figuring this out. So he came in for Duarte and basically just played the rest of what Duarte, I presume, would have played. So the question is that now going to be the case? Like, is he now going to start for Duarte and take over Duarte's minutes? Right? I guess that's the question. If he is starting, taking over Duarte's minutes, then he is in the position to play 32 plus minutes, provided that the game stays close enough for them to have him play 32 plus minutes. If he does not start, who else would start instead? Like Dwayne Washington or something like that?
They could go small, or they could go big and mix in. They could play Terry Taylor. I don't think they want to slide to Halliburton over to the 2 at the moment, so I don't think they would start Kiefer Sykes. But Washington, Taylor, or I'm telling you, there's going to be a game where at 0 ownership, maybe it might have happened over the weekend that I didn't even realize it. I missed it on Super Bowl Sunday. There was only a 2-game slate, but I was very big. I played Jalen Smith in the 777.
Yeah, I had him on Super Bowl Sunday. I didn't tell you this. I got actually 5th in the lottery on Super Bowl Sunday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on FanDuel, and Jalen Smith was a decent part of it.
Yeah,
he was good.
They like him. They made that. So just to give people background, oddly enough, he and Halliburton were taking back-to-back picks. He was a guy the Suns took. Obviously, the Suns were, they're in an incredible spot to win everything. But they really wanted, they really like, if they could have taken anything back and kept somehow had Halliburton play with Booker and Paul, that would have been the most beautiful thing. But the Indy went out and did it. This is another way you can build when you're restructuring, is that Jalen Smith couldn't sign an extension. So they really want to see what they've got with him. I think he's being under projected. So regardless of who starts or not, I'm going to play some Lance. If Lance doesn't start, then we get to get him at lower ownership, right? I mean, Lance's usage rate is 40% higher since joining the team. It's only been a few games, but it's 30% higher than Halliburton's is. That's how much usage he gets. And Buddy Hield's a strong play. Everybody in this game is a strong play if you can hang in there. And assuming that Giannis is back, maybe it's hard to hang in there. But
what's his name came into the Discord and suggested that that he's just going to sit until the All-Star game.
That Giannis is going to.
Yeah. Why would he play? That's.
I don't have that read personally.
Yeah.
From what I've heard from NBA groups, I currently have him projected tonight, and
so do I.
I think it's more likely that he's going to play over the next couple games than not. But you're right; they could just do that. It's not like they need the number one seed. If you're really worried about Brooklyn, in fact, it might not be better to have the number one seed, because then you get one more games with their whole team together. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple for Milwaukee, right? Like if Giannis is out, we completely ignore what just happened yesterday, in my opinion. And you go right back and you play Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton and Bobby Portis. And you don't need to do it all together in the same lineup, and you play some Nwora. Yeah, I just think that you got, especially like this matchup is the nuts. I mean, the Pacers, they played the worst game ever. They're not going to have it happen again if Giannis is out. And if Giannis is in, I kind of would lean ahead the other guys as being better spends, but so will everyone else. So you'll get even lower ownership on Giannis. What do you think about the Milwaukee side?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, like if he's out, then play Nwora and all that stuff, and Drew and Chris Middleton and Portis and et cetera. And if Giannis is in, yeah, sure, why not? I don't know. I just like the other spend-ups better, I think. I don't know.
Totally agree. But I love this. I do love this spot for Indiana. So I might be looking for a run back, because I could see playing 3 Indiana players in a lineup here, because it's Milwaukee fast paced. Indiana doesn't play defense, and Milwaukee does. What do? They give up 3-point shots. You have a bunch of guys who are heat check guys, between Washington, Hield, Lance, and to some extent Halliburton. That's a lot of guys who can drain threes, and that you could stay in the game just by if those guys get hot. So kind of like this game environment. I just wish I liked something from Milwaukee better. And obviously, if Giannis is out, this will be a very easy game to stack. What are your thoughts on the Clippers Suns? I'll save mine for the end, because I do.
Well, I actually have Charlotte, Minnesota next.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped. My bad.
So let me.
I skipped 2.
Yeah, you did. So
important ones.
Yeah, this game. I mean, this is a freaking track meet, right? The problem is that everybody seems to be priced pretty fairly, to say the least. I will say this again. I don't really get a chance to see LaMelo Ball play all too often, but I happen to have seen him in the last couple of games. I had a chance to watch a little bit, and I had him. So this guy just freaking just goes. I mean, he just goes. So I mean, I don't know if I'm going to play him, but I'm not going to argue with playing him like up to 10K. I mean, the guy just goes freaking bananas. And against Minnesota, that's going to be it's got to be a really high paced game with a lot of freaking points. Certainly seems that way.
244.
And in a way, the fact that these guys are all kind of priced fairly maybe reduces ownership a little bit on this stuff. So you want to take couple of these Charlotte guys and play them in this matchup. I think that's a good tournament approach. And then Minnesota also, D'Angelo Russell and Cat and Anthony Edwards, I mean, he gets his stuff going, you know what I mean? Like, so Beverly's a good kind of, Beverly's like a value play sort of, Vanderbilt's a value play sort of, but I don't know. I feel as though the lack of good points per dollar projections out of all of these guys is going to keep their ownership somewhat tame. I think Cat's going to get owned because he's under 10K. But aside from that, maybe Beverly just almost looking cash. But I don't know. I think this game is going to deliver. I just don't know exactly how to play it. But I'll start with LaMelo, and then I'll start with Edwards, and I'll start with those guys, and we'll work backwards, I guess.
Yeah, it's really interesting to watch the Edwards and Russell saga. You know, Russell scored all the points, and Edwards had all these down games. Literally had like 8 games in a row without hitting more than 32 fantasy points or something. So all of a sudden, Russell's getting owned like, you know, whatever, 10x the time that Edwards is being owned. He's 30%. Edwards is like 3%. And then Edwards does the Edwards thing and puts up 52 and 61 the last 2 games. And now you have the nut matchup. I think Patrick Beverly is the easiest play on the slate at first glance. He just signed a $13 million extension yesterday. It's not necessarily a flashy play. It's not a play that's maybe you're not going to get 40 out of him. But if you want if you give Beverly any sort of extra narrative and him feeling safe and comfortable and cozy after his career was almost over playing for the minimum, and now he's a $13 million guy for a team that's going to be a playoff team, like he just got his, the 1-year extension. But it's enough of a little bit of a thing where I feel like he feels secure. I think his minutes are going to be very secure at round 30, maybe, and with upside on that. He's the easiest play, but I do think you want to mix in the other guys, and I'm with you. I think Edwards would be my number 1. With Towns 1A, just because the center, I don't know. It's going to be hard for me not to want to play some Embiid. And then Russell makes a lot of sense too. So that's the order I have it. And Charlotte, I totally think Charlotte's going to be the under-owned team of the night, which is kind of crazy. And it makes a little sense because their rotations are in flux. But we just talked about a guy at 5,300 with basically the exact same situation in a little bit of a different sense. So Capella, there's no Collins, all that stuff. Montrezl Harrell, they did not bring Montrezl Harrell in to try and fill out a rot. Montrezl Harrell,
they used him. He was good his game.
Yeah, he played 29 minutes his second game. The first time was probably getting to know the offense. You have a big and Cat that can not only get someone in foul trouble, but you're going to have size on the court at all times. PJ Washington does not match up well with Cat. Mason Plumlee does not match up well with Cat. Harrell doesn't really either, but he's the best of the bunch. And he feeds on exactly what Karl-Anthony Towns gives up. Putback dunks, putback layups, offensive rebounding. This could be one of those Harrell games that maybe Harrell's the clever play. Maybe you play a Harrell and Capella kind of a lineup. You know what I mean? I feel like those guys are very similar plays. And Harrell's being projected for 24 minutes, but that could very easily be 30 minutes. And if he plays 30, he's going to put up 30-ish fantasy points with the upside of 50. I mean, that's just who he is. But I love the LaMelo call. It's hard at 7,900 with Rozier for me, but I think it's okay. I would rather play Bridges and just forget about some bad games lately, another just ceiling type of environment. So I will have a ton of exposure. The 2 teams that I'll be targeting the most today are going to be Charlotte and Indiana. Charlotte because the ownership, Indiana because they just don't have enough bodies. So I really like this game. Hard to know early in the day exactly what I'm going to do, but I think I talked through enough ideas.
I'll tell you something else. Even in their game against the Pistons when they won by 100, they had no interest in resting these guys towards the stretch down the stretch. And they only had like 8 guys, or whatever. Even the announcers were like, "Man, what do they think? This is a playoff game or something like that?" They were saying, "Oh, now we can get these guys rest." No, they brought even LaMelo in because what happens? They were on like a 6-game losing streak or something. Yep. So they were not interested. You know what I mean? It was a 28-point game, and then when they got it to 24 with 5 minutes to go, they're like, "Okay, LaMelo, back in." You know what I mean? He had to go back in. They had to like really seal it before they pulled him out of the game. So Charlotte, as long as they're going to be without those guys, they're going to keep playing these guys minutes. And yep.
Just include Oubre in your mix, by the way. The numbers will not be encouraging from what you've seen lately, but the guy's got a ceiling. And I just look at all of Charlotte's players, and I feel like, God, if they just played against Sacramento or Minnesota every night, these guys would all be like 50 fantasy points every game, and they could literally all do it at the same time. So I love that game environment. All right, what are your thoughts on the Memphis, New Orleans?
Yeah, it seemed like another one that you'd want to play, but there's nobody to play. Like I like Ja, but that's really, really it. I mean, nobody else rates to be like that great a player. I don't want to play Devontae Graham. You know, I don't know. McCollum, I think these guys, there's a lot of guys that can like do stuff. You know, I don't think that there's anybody that really stands out, especially on New Orleans. But you could always play Devontae Graham. I'm not Devontae Graham, John Morant. So that's who I like. I like John Morant in my mix.
Yeah, I think that New Orleans looks so much better of a team. I mean, you want to talk about scary? People joke about the Lakers being a 9, having to play the Lakers in the first round or whatever. I'm a Laker fan, and I would say I would be terrified of a New Orleans team if you even have any Zion chance to come back. Because with McCollum and Ingram and Valanciunas as a core, and and then you add the best player of all of them, and Zion by a long shot, all of a sudden you're looking at a team that's like a contending, that's a team in a year or two that maybe be able to contend. This is a really much improved team, which makes it much less interesting for fantasy. It's just hard to know. Devontae Graham, I guess, is the point per dollar guy, but like I just think it's going to spread enough between them. What I will do is, if Joe Val gets a low enough ownership, is play him. And he's 6,700 on FanDuel. So I think that's what maybe the best play in this game is Joe Val at 6,700. Ja is so incredible, but like you were saying about Lonzo and everything, like Ja has a good team around him. You know what I mean? He doesn't need to go out there and do everything. Now he still does it plenty of the time, but I don't think that we need to play Ja at 95 on this slate, even though he does show up as the best in this particular game. I think I'll do something else personally.
So the Clippers Phoenix, I wanted to pull up the game log from last night again, because I was sweating this. I had Zubac in my 777. And just to kind of show you what I was talking about earlier, I mean, this game kind of got out of hand as it got near the end of the third quarter. And then what they did is they brought in all these guys like Covington, Coffey, and Hartenstein, and they let them run out and finish the whole game. That's why they didn't bring back in Batum, who had a very, very nice fantasy game in the minutes that he played, and Zubac had a very nice fantasy game in the minutes that he played. Terrence Mann went kind of off. Yep. They let him play the fourth quarter. So it was just, the minutes was not, I mean, again, I would not make much of everybo's minutes last night. That's what I would say. Now, with that said, I think that playing a back-to-back in Phoenix, I think they're in a lot of trouble. And I think it really is worth, in a way, speculating on who do you think is going to be in the fourth quarter. All these guys from the Clippers remain cheap. And if you want to take a shot at any of those guys, between Mann and Hartenstein and Amir Coffey and Luke Kennard, if he plays and whatever, I do think that it's going to be garbage time in the fourth quarter, and something to consider. I don't know exactly what the answer is. I don't think I want to play the top guys from Phoenix. And yeah, this may be taking a really harsh stand to say I just don't think they're going to play the fourth quarter. And I just don't. I mean, that's the best I can describe this. Look, in the abstract, Booker and Paul look like really good plays. They're both under 9K, and their ownership is relatively tame. Ayton looks like a really, really strong player, 6,600. I don't know. I don't. Maybe I'm overthinking it and say I just know that they're not going to be forced to play their best. That's the best I could describe this. But they do project well. I guess I'll just kind of leave it at that for you.
Yeah, because I've got a pretty I do think we should look at things as from a certain light, and we had a pretty good sample size because we got to see these teams play in the conference finals last year. Something's up there with my data because I'm missing a couple games here, but just to give you an idea, so Zubac was almost out of the rotation last year in the Utah series that they won, and they were playing small to counter Utah's Gobert thing, and they couldn't, and it worked incredibly well. Great coaching job. It took him basically out of the rotation where he was playing between six, and he played 20 minutes in the first game. After that, it was 14, 13, 18, 8, and 6. And the 18, I believe, was in a somewhat of a blowout. Then he goes into the first game against the finals against the Sun, 18 minutes, and plays pretty well in the 18 minutes. Then he plays 34, 33, and 40 the next 3 games. And all those games he has double doubles. All those games he's over 4. One game he had 37 fantasy points. I sort of exaggerated earlier by accident, but I believe he had 46 and 42 in the other ones. Zubac, they like the matchup for him. Like, you know what I mean? He played a lot better against Ayton than he did in that series against Gobert. And we can maybe take a little bit from that. And maybe Zubac tonight is a tremendous play. And I don't think he's going to get the ownership as if he is as good a play as I think he is. I also think the minutes projection for him, I just mentioned playing 33 to 40 minutes, and he's projected to play 25 tonight. This is not a situation, and they have less bodies than they did back then. So I would start with Zubac, especially because the ownership part of it. It's hard to ignore what Terrence Mann is doing. Reggie Jackson also had a good postseason against these guys. We had an up and down postseason against these guys, but a good overall postseason. There's a lot of bodies, and it's hard to figure out what the Clippers are going to do night to night. But Terrence Mann has consistently proven that, the last 5 games since with this new rotation, that he's sort of the one. And also the Clippers may sit some people, so you might want to give some of these guys a little bit of a boost up, because it is a second of a back-to-back. You have old guys on your team like Batum. I know they didn't all have to play a million minutes, but still, this is a tough matchup in Phoenix. So if they stay close, I really like Zubac. I like Mann. It's going to be hard for them to stay close. But I do like those guys. I think they play with a lot of pride, the Clippers anyway. So the Booker and Chris Paul thing, absolutely understand it. Not going to do it myself. Maybe if it was in LA, I'd give Chris Paul the little LA back in LA boost or whatever you want to call it. Crowder certainly looks viable, and Ayton is probably the one guy who I actually would consider using, because he had some monster playoff games too, and he sort of looked really good lately. They just keep blowing everybody out, so it's hard to know what he can really put up. So I would say probably just Ayton at the moment for me from Phoenix, but I really like Mann, really like Zubac. And it's Reggie Jackson scares me to fade him, because this is the kind of thing where I think he's going to try and take over. And again, with the new rotations, he's been at 36, 48, and 42 fantasy points. Obviously a tough matchup, but he's a guy who doesn't mind that. It'll just make him go harder. Anyway, I do like that situation. And I've got my, now that we've gone through it all, I've got my list of my priorities. If just let me know if you have anything else to throw in, and then I'll do that real quick.
No, I'm good.
All right. So I think that there's a lot of guys you can make arguments for. Bogdanovich or Herter. I would leave Bogdanovich. Zubac I mentioned. I'm going to at least have 30% exposure at the moment is my plan. I definitely am going to play a lot of Trey. He's the guy in the 90 whatever range that I prefer. I like him a little better than Ja. Darius Garland, Capella or Okongwu. I really think one of those guys puts up like a 7x, but I think it could be Okongwu. So just way to get a little bit different when some people are going to start seeing that Capella was playing minutes again. Luka and Embiid are really close for me. Embiid, I'll just give it to him, I guess, but they're right there. I don't know. I have those guys like almost even. If I get enough value, I'll try to cram them into one lineup together. I like Lance, and we didn't mention Brissett before. He's gone completely nuts the last couple of games, but when he's going to be like 35% owned, I might be inclined to take a shot at fading that. But Lance and Hield, along with Halliburton, I think are all really interesting. And then Patrick Beverly, Terrence Mann, and I mentioned Zubac already. But Charlotte, Indy, and Atlanta are the teams that I want to exposure to. Atlanta because they're down Collins. The other teams because of the pace and environment. So that's sort of my priority list for tonight.
All right, so you want to do 6?
Yeah, we'll do 6.
Okay, we'll just do 6 as usual. And yeah.
All right, well, good luck to everybody out there tonight. We will see you at 6, and let's make some money, y'all. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, everybody.